The Shun family had 3 sons, all of whom were my childhood friends. When I was young, my family suffered a great tragedy. Both my parents passed away, and I was left with no one to care for me. It was the Shun family who took me in and raised me as their future daughter-in-law. But after I came of age, Shun Wenji, the second son, broke his promise and refused to marry me. He sneered, "A woman who was abducted by bandits and lost her chastity, what right does she have to be my wife? She'd be more suited as a concubine." So Father Shun asked his other 2 sons, my eldest brother, Shun Wenxing, who had rescued me from the bandits' den, remained silent. The third brother, Shun Wenyu, innocently claimed he was still too young and unwilling to marry so early. In the end, Father Shun made the decision to betroth me to Shun Wenji as a concubine. Reborn into this life, I pushed the door open and declared, "I refuse." Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. My sudden appearance interrupted the conversation among the father and his 3 sons in the study. They looked astonished, their expressions rather unpleasant. Shun Wenji was the first to speak, frowning as he scolded me. "Have you been eavesdropping outside the door all this time? Su Weiniang, do you even have any sense of propriety in your eyes?" Uncle Shun sat in the main seat, his heroic and imposing face showing a hint of displeasure, but he has always been indulgent and kind to me. Upon seeing this, he just waved his hand to signal Shun Wenji to be quiet. Then he asked me gently, "What do you want to say, Aang?" He wasn't sure how much of their conversation I had actually overheard, so after a moment's consideration, he chose to take the initiative to probe. After all, within this house, apart from the newly appointed top scholar in the civil examinations, Shun Wenji, and the youngest son, Shun Wenyu, who had yet to set foot on the battlefield, both he and his eldest son, Shun Wenxing, had been trained in warfare since childhood, tempered through countless battles, with senses far surpassing those of ordinary people. It's absolutely impossible that I could have eavesdropped from start to finish without being discovered. His suspicion was not wrong, because it was only much later that I came to know about their conversation that night, but they had no idea. Now, standing before them, it is me. I had already died once in my previous life. I bowed my head in respect to Uncle Shun. Fate has once again placed the opportunity to choose in my hands. This time, I will never repeat the same mistakes. I repeat, word for word, in this quiet study, each syllable resounding with clarity. "Uncle, I do not wish to marry Shun Wenji, neither as a wife, nor as a concubine." In the study, an eerie silence fell. Shun Wenxing glanced at me, then at my second brother, before calmly averting his gaze. Shun Wenyu, on the other hand, had stars in his eyes, his face a mix of surprise and excitement as he eagerly awaited the drama. Uncle Shun looked slightly taken aback, his gaze filled with pity as he turned to Shun Wenji, whose face was alternating between green and pale. For a moment, none of them spoke, but the furtive glances being exchanged only made Shun Wenji feel more embarrassed and humiliated. Shun Wenji's fair, handsome face flushed red with anger as he glared at me furiously. "Su Weiniang, what did you say? How dare you say that again?" He couldn't believe it. I, who used to be so infatuated with him that my heart would race and my face would flush at the mere sight of him, actually said such words. I nodded. Fulfilling his request, I repeated it again. "I won't marry you." Shun Wenji widened his eyes in shock. He raised his hand, pointing at me with a trembling finger. I knew without a doubt that whatever he was about to say would be harsh. Seeing the situation turning sour, Uncle Shun gave his eldest son a meaningful look, and together they restrained Shun Wenji. He sighed and said, "All right, let's not argue." He didn't ask me why. Turning to Shun Wenji with disapproval, he said, "What have you done recently to make Aang so upset?" So he thought that I was just throwing a tantrum with Shun Wenji. Shun Wenji, having achieved the top rank in the imperial examination, rode through the streets in triumph, brimming with pride and ambition. His strikingly handsome appearance and literary talent, renowned throughout the capital, instantly drew crowds around him, making him even more dashing and celebrated. He often returned late from drinking with friends, attended numerous banquets everywhere, and composed poems and verses for many noble ladies. I frequently quarreled with him, and our disputes were known throughout the entire general's residence, until a month ago, I was praying for blessings with my close friend on the mountain when we were suddenly kidnapped by bandits. Although we were quickly rescued by Shen Wanxing, who was patrolling nearby with his troops, the news still spread like wildfire, and rumors about my loss of chastity were everywhere. Shen Wanji felt guilty for not accompanying me that day and has since stayed faithfully at home with me. No longer going out to fool around. We haven't argued in a long time. Shen Wanji wanted to say he was wronged, but as the words reached his lips, he suddenly thought of something and froze. From the way he suddenly glanced at me guiltily, I suppose he must have thought that I had overheard his earlier remark about my chastity being compromised and his willingness to only take me as a concubine. In front of everyone, he suddenly hesitated, as if about to speak but holding back. The words I had intended to say also came to an abrupt halt when I saw the struggle on his face. I waited. I want to hear if he feels even a trace of guilt towards me. After a long silence, Shen Wanji seemed to have made up his mind. Without looking into my eyes, he stared elsewhere and said calmly, "I know Aang is innocent, but her reputation has been ruined after all, if she were to marry me as per the old agreement. I'm afraid she would have a hard time in the circle of noble ladies in the future. Better to be a cherished concubine, pampered by me, free from managing household affairs, enjoying fine clothes and delicacies every day, living a life of leisure and ease." I listened quietly to this high-sounding rhetoric. Suddenly, I laughed. He stood sideways to me, his handsome and upright figure entirely in a posture of avoidance. The shadow of that fervent youth who cherished and valued me is no longer seen in my younger days. These words actually made sense to Uncle Shen, but he was concerned about my feelings and tentatively asked for my thoughts. My answer remained unchanged. Shen Wanji looked at me with a complex expression. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he remained silent. Seeing my resolute attitude, Uncle Shen sighed. His gaze shifted to his other two sons. He spoke in a low voice. "The old promise cannot be broken. Tutor Su was kind to our Shen family during his lifetime, and taking care of Aang is also our Shen family's responsibility. Which of you two is willing to marry Aang?" No one answered. After Uncle Shen frowned and urged them, Shen Wenyu reluctantly spoke up. He excused himself by saying he was still too young and didn't want to marry so early. In truth, he was only 2 years younger than me, but I didn't really care what he said. I couldn't help but sneak a glance at the tall, handsome man standing at the very edge. He keenly noticed my gaze, lowered his long lashes, and slightly averted his eyes, but soon he returned to his usual self, remaining silent as always. Even though I had long known, yet when truly facing such a cruel outcome, I still feel an uncontrollable bitterness and embarrassment in my heart. In my previous life, I did not intrude upon tonight's private conversation, because of the kidnapping incident. I was still haunted by fear, afraid to go out for fear of being pointed at and discussed. I stayed in my room all day, feeling depressed and unhappy. It was Shen Wanji who told me the news that our wedding date had been set. He comforted me and encouraged me to prepare the wedding dress with the embroiderer, which finally lifted my spirits. The luxurious crimson wedding gown was stitched by me, needle by needle, with heartfelt joy. They deliberately kept me in the dark about the news from the outside world. I never realized it. I was kept in the dark all along, until the day of the wedding. I got into the bridal sedan chair and was carried through the side gate into Shen Wanji's new mansion by the wedding procession. Only then did I realize I had been deceived. Shen Wanji's lawful wife is not me, but the daughter of the Minister of Revenue, and I, filled with gratitude and joy, thought that Shen Wanji and I had gone from childhood sweethearts to growing old together as husband and wife. But in the end, I was only his concubine. I cried and lifted my bridal veil, ready to leave. Shen Wanji rushed over upon hearing the news. To comfort me, he abandoned his newlywed wife on their wedding night and stayed in my room the entire evening, using threats and bribes, sweet talk and persuasion, coaxing and cajoling. He exhausted every possible argument. Finally, "I've come to face reality." He told me to live a good life with him from now on, saying that I'm the only one in his heart, and his official wife is just for his career. I believed it, but from the very first day of their marriage, that official wife has already held a grudge against me. At first, Shen Wanji stood by my side and helped me, but later, unable to bear the disputes in the household, He simply stayed away and didn't return home, leaving me alone to deal with the harassment and exclusion from the legal wife. Those were the most painful times. I was pregnant without knowing it, and ended up having a miscarriage. With a heart full of grievances and nowhere to turn, I struggled for a long time with my meager belongings, and eventually returned to the Shun residence. At that time, Shun's parents were traveling abroad and paid no attention to household matters. Shun Wenyu had just taken up his new official post and was far away in another land. Only Shun Wanqing is here and willing to help me. He was furious when he learned about my miscarriage. He immediately summoned Shun Wanji and enforced family discipline, beating him so severely that he couldn't get out of bed for 10 days. He knows I don't want to go back, so he overruled all objections, letting me stay with the Shun family, and protected me through a long period of peaceful days. It was only later that Shun Wenji couldn't bear it any longer and slandered him, claiming there was an affair between us. I had no choice but to go back with Shun Wenji. Perhaps after experiencing peace and happiness, one can no longer endure suffering in silence. Half a month later, I hanged myself to death. As my soul lingered, aside from seeing Shun Wenji holding my corpse and weeping in despair, I seemed to also catch sight of Shun Wanqing and Shun Wenyu rushing hurriedly to the mansion gate. When he opened his eyes again, I then returned to this very night. Uncle Shun on the main seat looked troubled. Due to my presence, he couldn't bring himself to suggest that I become a concubine. He could only pretend to scold his 3 sons for being unrighteous and unworthy gentlemen. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, silently mocking myself. In my past life, I was too close to see things clearly. Now, reborn into this life, I stand from an outsider's perspective. Only then did I realize the people around me. The kinder they seem, the more hypocritical they are. I no longer want to be an object, picked over and criticized by them. I took the initiative to say, "Uncle, let the old agreement be void from now on." As soon as the words were spoken, everyone turned to look at me. I bowed deeply to Uncle Shun and said calmly, "It was merely a childhood betrothal promise made in words. It doesn't count. Today, I, Su Weiniang, am the one who actively renounces the engagement, so the Shun family need no longer be troubled by this matter. I am endlessly grateful for the Shun family's years of nurturing and care, and I only hope to repay this kindness in the future. Tomorrow, I will move out of the Shun residence." They all looked utterly incredulous. Shun Wenji stepped forward urgently, gripping my wrist tightly. He was truly furious, shouting angrily, "Just because no one would take you as a wife? Is the distinction between wife and concubine really that important? Su Weiniang, you're an orphan, and with such a notorious reputation, where do you think you can go if you leave the Shun family?" "Wenji, stop!" Shun Wanqing shouted sharply, taking advantage of Shun Wenji's momentary daze. I broke free from his grip. I rubbed my sore arm where he had grabbed me. I said to Uncle Shun, "Although the Su family has declined, the old residence is still there, and many loyal servants are willing to return. I can manage just fine on my own, Uncle, so you need not worry." These words were harsh, bordering on disrespect and unfilial. Thus, Uncle Shun, with a grim expression, said nothing more and waved us away. Leaving the study, I walked quickly at the forefront. I could feel the mixed gazes of the other 3 fixed on my back. Shun Wenji called out to me a few times, but I kept walking, not turning back at all. The night was already deep, and I lit many candles, having the maids help me pack my belongings. They didn't understand what was happening, but seeing my grim expression, they didn't dare ask more and quickly continued packing. In fact, in my previous life, I could have taken this way out as well. The news of me marrying Shun Wenji as a concubine spread. Many of my father's former students felt indignant and did not hesitate to reprimand Shun Wenji, calling him ungrateful. Even the old servants of the Su family, who had been dismissed back then, came to see me, worried about my situation. But the die was cast, and it was too late for anything. I only understood after marriage. Once a woman is married, many things are beyond her control. Fortunately, in this second life, I still have a choice. Early one morning, I had the butler prepare a carriage for me. I was just about to head back to the Su family's old residence when someone suddenly called out to me from behind. It was Aunt Shun, who had hurriedly cut short her prayers at the temple and rushed back last night. She stepped forward and took my hand, scolding me gently. You silly child, why are you suddenly insisting on going back to your hometown? If Xinga hadn't sent someone to tell me overnight, I would have been left in the dark. Were you planning to leave without saying goodbye? That really hurts your aunt's feelings. Aunt Shen's eyes reddened, and she absolutely refused to let me leave. I had been brought to the Shun residence since childhood and raised under her care, long having regarded her as my own mother. With no other choice, I was dragged back to my room by her. Shun Wenqin must have told her the whole story. She scolded Shun Wenji right in front of me. She also grounded him, forbidding him from going out for a month. Don't worry, Aang, how could I ever let you suffer as a concubine? If these rascals refuse to marry you as their wife, I'll find you another good match. After all, there are plenty of fine young men in the capital. Outside, Shun Wenyu, who had been clinging to the window at some point, couldn't hold back. He shouted in dissatisfaction, Mom, didn't Big Brother ask you to persuade Sister properly? What are you doing? Do you really have the heart to marry Sister off to someone else's family? Aunt Shen immediately pushed open the window, grabbed a cup of hot tea, and splashed it outside. What are you, a man? Eavesdropping on our women's conversation, Shun Wenyu, caught off guard, yelped in pain from the scalding. Then, amidst the aunt's scolding, he ran off in a huff. Aunt Shen set down her teacup, intending to sit, but suddenly her body swayed unsteadily. I quickly stepped forward to steady her. It seemed as though that brief commotion just now had drained all her strength. I watched her breathing slightly heavily, her face unable to conceal its pale exhaustion. Suddenly, it hit me. In her previous life, Aunt Shun passed away from illness while traveling with her uncle. In fact, her health had been declining for the past few years. She had the habit of eating vegetarian meals and worshipping Buddha, staying at the temple for a period each year. During the time I married Shun Wenji in my past life, she was at the temple. It wasn't until the wedding day that she was informed and asked to return by the Shun father and son. For this, she flew into a great rage. As for me being deceived into becoming a concubine, she was also kept in the dark and only found out afterward. After that, she fell ill. Perhaps it was the overwhelming anxiety that worsened the illness. In any case, in this Shun residence, she is the only one who truly cares for and loves me. I sat on the couch, resting my head on her lap. Tears streamed down from the corners of my eyes. Said sadly, Auntie, you must take good care of your health and live a long life. Aunt Shen smiled, patted my head, and readily agreed. Not long after, she sighed again. She whispered to me, Good child, stay. The Su family has no one left to take care of you. Don't worry, as long as I'm here, I will never let you suffer any injustice. After a long while, I slowly closed my eyes. Okay. I still stayed on at the Shun residence, but at the same time, I did not give up searching for those former servants of the Su family who had come to find me in my previous life. One day, I will leave this place and return to my true home. Perhaps my disrespect that day angered Uncle Shun. Not long after, he arranged a marriage proposal for Shun Wenji. Just like in the previous life, it was still the daughter of the Minister of Revenue. Shun Wenji did not refuse. But he did not give up the idea of making me his concubine. He came to find me, very puzzled. You used to despise such fame and status the most, and even said that as long as you were with me, you would be willing to live a simple life with plain tea and coarse clothes. Why is it that just the position of a concubine makes you so resentful? He patiently coaxed me, even raising his hand to swear to the heavens, there is no other woman in my heart but you. Marrying a wife from a noble family was solely for my career and ambitions, with no trace of personal affection. Ah Ying, you must believe me, he wanted to take my hand and pour out his heart. I frowned and avoided his touch. My face full of disgust. I had heard such words countless times in my past life. I looked up at him, my eyes long devoid of any affection. I sneered coldly. Today you can force me to be a concubine for the sake of your career. Tomorrow, for other reasons, you will continue to make me suffer. Shun Wenji. I hope you understand, whether as a wife or a concubine, I couldn't care less, because I have no intention of marrying you at all. Shun Wenji stared at me intently. He accidentally knocked over the teacup. He was so angry that he gritted his teeth, and all the gentleness and patience on his face vanished in an instant. Do you think you still have a choice, Su Wenying? A woman who has been defiled by bandits, what right do you have to be picky? Do you know what people outside are saying about you? Now, besides me, who else would be willing to marry a used shoe like you? Asterisk slap asterisk. Before he could finish, I could no longer hold back and slapped him hard across the face. The room fell silent, dead quiet. The maids were all hiding outside, not daring to make a sound. I was breathing heavily, my breath trembling. You clearly know I am innocent. Shinwonji's face was full of anger, but when he turned and saw my reddened eyes, he froze for a moment, then he quickly averted his gaze, avoiding eye contact. His jaw tightened, his brow furrowed, as if regretting the harsh words he had spoken in a moment of anger. But it was already too late. Once hurtful words are spoken, there is no turning back. Shinwonji lost all his imposing manner. He lowered his head and hesitated, wanting to apologize to me, but I no longer wanted to hear it and drove him out of my room. This dispute caused quite a stir and soon became known throughout the entire household. Aunt Shin sent many things to comfort me. She also had Shinwonji enforce the family rules, giving Shinwonji a severe beating. Shinwenyu also became much more obedient. He made several beautiful kites with his own hands and invited me to fly them together to relax. I had no mood to play with him and directly refused. What I didn't expect was, afterwards, Shinwonji actually took the initiative to approach me. He invited me to have lunch together. Since we grew up, we have rarely sat down to eat together. Shinwonji has spent most of these years in the military, becoming increasingly steady and mature, making it impossible to guess what lies behind his cold and reticent expression. He didn't eat slowly, yet his posture remained dignified. I had only finished half a bowl of rice when he had already finished his meal and put down his bowl and chopsticks. I awkwardly put down my bowl as well. Then I heard him suddenly speak. Recently, many people from outside the mansion have been in contact with you. I was stared at intently by those sharp, scrutinizing eyes. I couldn't help but sit up straight and nodded honestly. Yes, those people used to be servants of the Su family. Shinwonji was silent for a moment before saying decisively, "You still want to leave?" I didn't know how to respond, so I simply remained silent as well. I had thought Shinwonji would try to persuade me. I was already prepared to respond. But I was caught off guard, hearing him ask earnestly and bluntly, "What if I said I'm willing to marry you?" I stumbled back to my courtyard in a daze. I'm still in a daze. After Shinwonji asked that question, I was completely stunned and couldn't react at all. Seeing this, he told me to go back and think it over carefully. If I agreed, he would start preparing the betrothal gifts. It was so sudden. In my confusion, I felt a hint of strangeness. Shinwonji had indeed been very good to me before this. He was like both an elder brother and a father, steady and reliable. I also had complete trust and dependence on him, but he never showed any romantic feelings toward me. Even when he saw me getting close to Shinwonji, he never acted jealous like Shinwenyu occasionally did. Even that night, when Uncle Shin asked which of them would be willing to marry me, he remained silent and avoided my gaze. Was he doing this just to keep me here? I couldn't figure out what he was thinking, and it left me unsettled. Amid the turmoil, there was also a faint, undeniable flutter in my chest, until 2 nights later, when someone knocked on my window. Miss, under the frosty moonlight, a dashing man in a neat, fitted outfit stood beneath my window. It was Zhao Xiaosheng, the son of the former butler of the Su residence, whom I had contacted not long ago. He was 3 years older than me. In my hazy childhood memories, there is still an impression of him playing with me. "Brother Xiaosheng, is the Su mansion already repaired and tidied up?" Zhao Xiaosheng nodded, but then, his expression turned serious. These days, while going back and forth between the Su mansion and the Shin mansion, I accidentally witnessed some things. I think, miss, you ought to know the truth. He was not one to joke around. I suddenly realized that what he was saying might be related to me, and it could be of great importance. So I glanced at the maid keeping watch outside the room and carefully climbed out through the window. Following Zhao Xiaosheng, I arrived at a small courtyard in the east. This place was remote, mostly used for storing miscellaneous items, and few people passed by on a regular basis. I grew increasingly puzzled, but Zhao Xiaosheng made a gesture for me to be quiet. Then he took me to hide in a concealed spot he had already scouted out. Before long, someone arrived. Seeing the figures of Shun Wenji and Shun Wenrui enter one after the other, my heart sank. However, just half a quarter of an hour after they came in, Shun Wenqing actually showed up too. As soon as he entered the room, the two brothers who had been chatting earlier immediately fell silent. The atmosphere instantly became tense and eerie. It was Shun Wenqing who found a chair to sit down and said indifferently, "If there's something, say it." His calm expression instantly infuriated Shun Wenji. He took a few steps forward and sneered sarcastically, "Big brother still wants to pretend nothing happened. I heard that you proposed to Aang a few days ago." Shun Wenqing's eyes flickered, and he didn't deny it. "Yes, fine, I break off the engagement upfront and make Aang hate me, while you sit back and reap the benefits. Do you still remember our promise?" My heart suddenly skipped a beat, and my right eyelid began to twitch uncontrollably. "Promise? What agreement? Does it have something to do with me?" Shun Wenyu, who had been watching from the sidelines, said gloomily, "I never thought Big Brother would be even more unruly than I am. If I had known it would come to this, why would I have bothered playing along with this farce of brothers sharing a wife? I should have just agreed to marry her when father asked me that day. Now look, big sister won't even talk to the two of us, yet she's willing to have a meal alone with Big Brother." Shun Wenyu sneered and commented, "What a disaster, such a huge loss." Shun Wenqing tapped his fingers rhythmically on the armrest, patiently waiting for his two younger brothers to finish venting. Once they had calmed down a bit, he only spoke lightly, "What a disappointment." Shun Wenji was indignant and about to get angry again. Then he said, "If I hadn't found a way to keep her steady first, she would have run off with someone else long ago." His gaze swept heavily over the two people before him, who bore some resemblance to him. With a faint, ambiguous smile, he said, "She is far more capable than you think. Plans have changed. If you want to keep her firmly under control and confined to the inner chambers of the Shun residence, you'd better set aside your useless jealousy." It was the height of summer, yet I felt as though I were trapped in an icy cellar. My body was numb, my limbs stiff, and even my slow breaths carried a faint, trembling mist of frost. The chilling conversation inside continued, the few people I remember spending my days and nights with, as if in this dark, secluded place, they slowly peeled off their human skins, revealing the cruel, selfish, and cold-blooded true nature within. Shun Wenji paced the room, frowning with dissatisfaction. "What do you mean, brother? You marry Aang, and then what?" Shun Wenyu crossed his arms and leaned against the pillar, staring straight at Shun Wenqing. "What about us? Back then, you said that once Aang becomes our official wife, she would step out from the inner chambers and into the public eye. By then, those who have received favors from the Su family, the students of Grand Tutor Su, and even the one from the Eastern Palace, will inevitably show her more consideration. That way, it would be almost impossible for them to jointly possess me, only by making me a concubine, trapped within the inner chambers. Best if there's a principal wife ahead to suppress me, cutting off all my connections to the outside world. Only then can I completely become the possession of the three brothers, for their defilement." But the three of them were not as united as they appeared on the surface. Shun Wenqing wanted to marry me, even if he proposed that his wife could be intimate with them in the future. Shun Wenji and Shun Wenyu remained wary of him. Feeling dissatisfied, Shun Wenji frowned and asked, "Aang is already disappointed in me now. After she marries you, things will only get worse. How could she ever let me get close to her again?" Shun Wenyu also chimed in repeatedly. Being confronted by two younger brothers at the same time, Shun Wenqing was already at the end of his patience. He stood up, exuding an overwhelming pressure, and said with utter disdain, "Do I really need to teach you the principle of slapping someone and then giving them a sweet date? If she's unwilling, then use force. At that time, I will leave the residence to give you the opportunity. As for how to make her obey, that will depend on your own methods. Only one thing, do not harm her." After he finished speaking, the room fell into a brief silence. The other two were either shocked by his scheme or truly taking it to heart, lost in thought, whichever it was. It made me feel nauseated and at the same time, sent chills down my spine. I felt dazed, as if I no longer recognized Shun Wenqing, or perhaps, I had never truly understood him in the first place. I couldn't suppress my trembling, my legs suddenly went weak, and my body collapsed straight down. Zhao Xiaoxing beside me caught me in time, but this slight movement still caught the attention of a highly skilled martial artist inside the room. Fortunately, Shen Wenji's voice rang out at that moment. He still had reservations about Shen Wenjing's idea and proposed another possibility. Since we're using force anyway, why not pretend to be mountain bandits one more time? This time, we'll drug her and make it a done deal. Once she loses her chastity, she probably won't think about leaving the Shen residence anymore. My mind suddenly went blank, as if struck by lightning. Shen Wenji's voice gradually faded away. I could hear less and less until nothing was clear and indescribable. Immense horror and resentment engulfed me like a tidal wave. One thing after another happened tonight. I couldn't even believe it, to the point where everything felt absurd, and I began to doubt whether I was dreaming. Creak, a faint sound came from above my head. A vein at my temple throbbed. I lifted my head. When I met Shen Wenjing's dark, deep eyes through the gap in the window, I didn't even feel flustered. It was him instead, after realizing it was me eavesdropping outside the window. His pupils suddenly trembled violently. That usually unshakable, stern face actually revealed a rare trace of panic. "Who's there, Shen Wenyu?" asked from inside the room. Shen Wenzun immediately composed himself and gently closed the window. "It's just the sound of the wind." In the conversation that followed, Shen Wenjing suddenly became very quiet. He disagreed with Shen Wenji's idea of pretending to be bandits and kidnapping me again, and he no longer mentioned how, after marrying me, he would promise his two younger brothers to share possession of me. He wanted to end this nighttime conversation immediately. However, the other two felt he was being too autocratic and refused to let it go. Shen Wenyu sneered, "If that's the case, what difference does it make who marries her? I could also ask for my sister's hand in marriage and give you all a chance." Shen Wenji retorted, "Didn't you say you were too young and unwilling to marry early? Now you suddenly want a wife. Your two older brothers aren't even married yet. No matter what, it's not your turn." He looked at Shen Wenjing and said bluntly, "If you, as the eldest brother, get married, what will happen to that mistress you've been pampering for over 3 years? Aren't you afraid she'll make a scene?" Shen Wenyu refused to back down. "What chance do you think you have? Don't forget, right now, the person my sister hates the most is you." Shen Wenjing frowned and pressed his fingers to his forehead. His patience stretched to the limit. He suddenly slammed the table hard. "Enough, what's all this arguing about?" His gaze swept over the two of them as he said in a low voice, "Since that's the case, then let's each rely on our own abilities." After saying this, he added in a low voice, "This time, no more underhanded tactics are allowed." Shen Wenji called him hypocritical, and Shen Wenyu snorted coldly. They parted on bad terms in the end. After the two of them left, Shen Wenjing sat inside the room, motionless for a long time, until I expressionlessly asked Zhao Xiaoxing to take me back to my room. Shen Wenjing suddenly opened the door of the storage room and looked at me calmly. It seemed he had already made a decision. Facing me, he offered no explanation, as if he no longer intended to keep up the pretense. His gaze swept over Zhao Xiaoxing's hand supporting mine, and he frowned. "Let go." Zhao Xiaoxing naturally wouldn't listen to him. Seeing this, Shen Wenjing grew impatient and didn't bother to speak again. His figure flashed, and it was almost impossible to see how he made his move. Zhao Xiaoxing was kicked by him and slammed against the wall. I had no strength. Staggering and falling into Shen Wenjing's arms, he took the opportunity to hold me, his hand stroking my back, and paused for a moment. "Why are you sweating so much?" The sweat soaked through the thin clothing on my back, clinging coldly to my skin. Shen Wenjing only paused for a moment before his hand continued to hold my waist and back without restraint. He instructed Zhao Xiaoxing, "Go back and have someone prepare some hot water for a bath." After struggling in vain, I gave up the futile resistance and shot Zhao Xiaoxing a meaningful glance. The latter finally nodded, gave Shen Wenjing a hostile glare, and then left. The secluded courtyard was now free of outsiders. Shen Wenjing lowered his gaze to look at me, but was pricked by the hatred in my eyes. His Adam's apple bobbed, and he raised his hand to cover my eyes. "Don't look at me like that, Aang. I know you might not be able to accept it, but I really do like you." I couldn't help but let out a scornful laugh. Shen Wenjing paused for a moment and stopped explaining. He abandoned the sentimental act he was not good at. His tone shifted to a familiar sense of oppression as he said coldly, "I can give you a choice, marry me, or I'll force you to marry me. This is not a choice for me, but rather leaves me with nowhere to hide." Before letting me leave, Shen Wonchuan hesitated repeatedly, yet he still gave me a response about tonight's matter. He said he wouldn't let the other two act recklessly anymore. After marrying me, he wouldn't let them set their sights on me again. The promise of sharing a wife inside the house was merely a delaying tactic. The three brothers share the same stubbornness deep down, stopping at nothing to achieve their goals. Not saying it that way, he couldn't calm his two younger brothers. His words, I didn't believe a single word, but I didn't argue back. Just listened calmly. Returning to my courtyard, Shen Wonxing released his grip on me, hinting meaningfully, "Mother has been bedridden lately. If it's not good news, it's better not to disturb Aang." I paused in my steps, then she turned her back to him and slammed the door shut heavily. After that day, I was placed under Shen Wonxing's airtight surveillance. I couldn't get out. Zhao Xiaoxing was also kept outside the residence and couldn't get in. Shen Wonxing made no attempt to hide his disgust toward the unfamiliar man by my side. He even bluntly expressed his murderous intent toward Zhao Xiaoxing right in front of me. Killing an ordinary person would be as easy as turning over his hand for him, but he still gave me one last chance. I could only write a letter, telling Zhao Xiaoxing not to come again. The letter was even reviewed by Shen Wonxing before it could be sent out. After completely dropping all pretense, his controlling nature became suffocating, even though I hadn't yet agreed to marry him. You can find out from the maids that Shen Wonxing has already started preparing for the wedding. Fortunately, it wasn't long before Shen Wonji and Shen Wenwu noticed something was wrong. They began to cause endless trouble for Shen Wonxing. Amid the chaos, I managed to sneak out of the mansion to find Zhao Xiaoxing and the others. A sudden accident occurred. I was gagged and dragged into a dark alley. When I woke up again, I found myself in a cave, though it was a cave. There was a soft cushion beneath me, and upon touching it, I realized it was made of expensive silk. In the darkness, footsteps approached. The man deliberately lowered his voice, his laughter lewd and obscene. "Hey, little lady, you managed to escape last time, but this time, even if you scream your throat raw." Shen Wenyu. The other person's words came to an abrupt halt. After a rustling sound, a bright red candle was lit inside the cave. Shen Wenyu, dressed in red with her hair tied up in a high ponytail, smiled brightly, her eyes sparkling and teeth gleaming. He cozied up to her like a spoiled child. "Sister is so amazing. You recognized me right away, Tilda. Or perhaps," his smile deepened, "that night, you really did hear everything." Shen Wonji enjoyed reading poetry and literature. With no talent or interest in martial arts, Shen Wenwu, like his elder brother, had practiced martial arts since childhood and could endure hardship. So that night, aside from Shen Wonxing, Shen Wenyu also noticed the commotion outside the window. Standing close by, he guessed my hidden presence outside from the strange expression on his elder brother's face. But regarding that night's conversation, he cared even less than Shen Wonxing. "It's good that you heard, then. I suppose you know what's about to happen," Shen Wenyu said with a grin. "Even if you beg for mercy, sister, I won't go easy on you." He picked up the box at the foot of the bed and poured out all sorts of strange props from inside. While excitedly showing and introducing them to me, he said, "Don't be afraid, it won't hurt you. Just in case, I also gave you a little something to liven things up. It should start taking effect soon. Come on, sister. You choose first. Which one do you like?" I calmly stared at him. Suddenly, I said, "This isn't fair." Shen Wenyu paused his fidgeting with the tool. Tilting his head in confusion, I picked up the medicine bag nearby, took out a pill, leaned forward, and roughly shoved it into his mouth. "You take one too." Shen Wenyu was taken aback for a moment, then the corners of his eyes crinkled into a smile, obediently swallowed that small pill. His Adam's apple bobbed, his eyes deep and intense, as he leaned in following my retreating hand and licked my palm. "So, big sister likes it like this. Wonderful, it suits me perfectly." He simply grabbed my wrist, leaned in close, and unfastened his belt. Unable to contain the eagerness on his face, he breathed heavily and said, "Marry me, will you?" "Not them. Let me marry you. Tonight will be our wedding night." Shen Wenyu shook his head. then suddenly frowned and held his forehead. He looked at me, whose expression remained unchanged all along, finally sensing that something was wrong. Why aren't you reacting? Wait, what did you just give me to eat? I lifted my leg and kicked him over. Shen Wenyu was completely limp and weak, struggling even to get up. He could only glare at me fiercely, looking down at him from above. I retorted, "Do I look that stupid in your eyes? Since I already knew what you were up to, how could I not have any precautions?" I lifted the large red candle from the table, tilted it slightly toward him. The melted wax dripped onto the back, narrowly avoiding igniting a spark. Shen Wenyu was unable to move. Could only watch helplessly, his heart pounding in his throat. He cried out in a trembling voice, "Sister, are you going to kill me?" I stared at him for a long time, then slowly set down the candlestick. I still couldn't bring myself to kill someone with my own hands, although the person before me is detestable. We grew up together since childhood. I left him alone in the cave and turned to leave. Outside, the night was deep, filled with the sound of rain pattering on leaves. And the air was thick with the damp scent of grass and soil. I am very familiar with this mountain. When I was a child, I was playful and often came here with Shen Wenyu to play hide and seek. But the mountains were dangerous, with frequent mudslides and landslides, and wild wolves and venomous snakes lurking around. Before long, we were no longer allowed to come here to play. I followed my memory and made my way down the mountain along the small path. Before leaving, I destroyed the concealment arrangements Shen Wenyu had made outside the cave. As I neared the foot of the mountain, I spotted a familiar carriage parked below. Someone was hurrying toward me, holding an umbrella. A large outer robe was thrown over my head, covering me completely. I didn't resist and got into the carriage with Shen Wenyu, who had come to find me. He was furious and began scolding me as soon as we were on the carriage. He forbade me from running off again and said I wasn't allowed to leave the residence without his permission. I couldn't be bothered to listen, so I closed my eyes and pretended to doze off against the carriage. The carriage quickly fell silent. None of us mentioned Shen Wenyu, who was still left in the cave. The next day, the servants who went to look for Shen Wenyu returned with panicked expressions. He was dead, because the luck was far too bad. During the 3 hours when the medicine took effect, the cave was discovered by several wild wolves seeking shelter from the rain. Shen Wenyu, powerless to defend herself, was bitten in the stomach by the wolves, her internal organs torn out. When her body was recovered, the remains were horrifically mangled. Uncle Shen wept bitterly, but the news was kept from Aunt Shen, who was ill. However, to my surprise, Shen Wenyu's funeral was extremely hasty, with the body laid to rest for only 1 day before being buried immediately. Even the news was suppressed and did not spread beyond the mansion. Uncle Shen continued to be so busy that he was nowhere to be seen all day. Shen Wenyu and Shen Wenyu also attended court on time every day, as if it were someone else's younger brother who had died. Don't jump to conclusions. It's just that there's some chaos in the capital today, and many matters must be kept under the radar for now. After returning to the residence, Shen Wenyu didn't even have time to change out of his official robes before coming to sit in my courtyard for a while. He said, "Wenyu's funeral will be held at a later date. Additionally, our wedding cannot be held on a grand scale for now. If you mind, once the turmoil passes, we can hold a grand wedding ceremony again." I had no intention of arguing with him and instead seized the loophole in his words to press further. "What exactly happened?" Shen Wenyu said indifferently. "Womenfolk need not inquire." I frowned sharply and said coldly, "I will not marry you." Shen Wenyu was completely unfazed. He stood up and left with a remark, "The wedding dress will be embroidered in 10 days. The 10th day, this means I have less than 10 days left to escape." I had originally planned to use the inside contact left to me. Unexpectedly, that very night, Shen Wenyu suddenly appeared in my courtyard. Compared to Shen Wenyu's indifference, Shen Wenyu seemed even more sorrowful and burdened by his younger brother's departure. It seemed he already knew about the night Shen Wenyu died. Both Shen Wenyu and I stood by and did nothing. But more than hating me, he hated Shen Wenyu even more. "I know you've already found a place to go. Returning to the Su residence is just a pretense." Shen Wenyu tugged at the corner of his mouth, revealing a pale smile. "Let me help you. Ah Ying, run away. Consider it what I owe you." I had thought Unworthy let me go with ulterior motives, but it wasn't until the carriage had traveled far from the capital that I lifted the curtain and gazed at the gradually shrinking city in the hazy night. Only then did I realize Unworthy was genuinely helping me. However, I did not want to question his intentions. Zhao Xiaoxing drove the carriage, making sure no one was following behind. He then began to steer the horse toward the final destination. Unworthy was right. The Su residence is merely a front I've put up in plain sight. After the entanglements of my past life, I couldn't wait to put as much distance as possible between Unworthy and myself. How could I possibly live in the capital, burdened with the constant worry of running into him? The place I've chosen to settle is a small town I once passed through during my travels with my parents. The mountains and waters are beautiful, the people are simple and honest, and the climate is very pleasant. It left a very good impression on me when I was young. Most importantly, no one in the Shen family knew. It would effectively prevent Unworthy from pursuing me later. Zhao Xiaoxing's father, the elderly and loyal old butler, had already arranged everything. We settled in here from then on. A few days later, I went out shopping with a few young maids. On the way back, we saw someone fishing by the stream beside the road. The man was dressed in simple, everyday clothes. His dark hair casually tied up, exuding an ethereal and aloof aura. He was fishing alone, with 4 guards standing by his side. After hesitating for a moment, I asked the young maids to return first and approached alone. The guards did not stop me, so I boldly called out, "Your Highness." The Crown Prince extended a slender finger, pressing it to his lips. "Sure." I immediately shut my mouth. Not long after, a fish took the bait, and the Crown Prince joyfully reeled it in to take a look. "It's a grass carp about the size of a palm." He wasn't annoyed at all. Instead, he said with great interest, "Not bad. At least we didn't return empty-handed." The Crown Prince turned around, beaming with a smile, and shook the small fish he was holding in his hand at me. "Miss Su, it's been a long time. Back in the days when I was reborn and searching everywhere for the old servants of the Su family, the Crown Prince took the initiative to contact me. Because my father had once been the Crown Prince's tutor, and during a journey with the young prince, he had risked his life to save the Crown Prince once. Therefore, the Crown Prince has always been grateful. The Zhao father and son were also found with his help. He once sent a message to me, "Whenever I am in trouble, I can always turn to him." I made up my mind to stay away from the capital and did not want to get too involved with the Crown Prince, so unless it's absolutely necessary, I won't ask him for help. However, the recent strangeness at the Shen residence felt off to me, so I did write to him about it. I just didn't expect to see him here. The Crown Prince was holding a small grass carp, accompanied by several tall, burly guards. He came to my house unceremoniously to mooch a meal. During the meal, he casually mentioned to me, "The Shen family has rebelled." Clatter, my hand trembled, and my chopsticks fell to the floor. The Crown Prince couldn't help but laugh. He placed a piece of fish in my bowl. "Did it scare you?" I took the new chopsticks handed to me by Zhao Xiaoxing. Still feeling a bit dazed, the Crown Prince did not guard against me. Or perhaps, he had long been aware of the Shen family's rebellious intentions, and the fact that he could speak of it so calmly in public now suggests he has the situation completely under control. Speaking of which, their rebellion has a bit to do with you. Me, what? The Crown Prince laughed again. He said my father had only me, a daughter, under his care. Back then, the Shen family used the marriage contract as an excuse to take me away and raise me. The emperor, as well as many court officials who had received my father's favor, have shown varying degrees of tolerance and care toward the Shen family. As a great general, Lord Shen already had the suspicion of amassing military power for his own ends. After receiving more tolerance and promotions from the emperor, he began to grow restless. The Crown Prince sighed. It's a wonder he managed to endure for so many years before rebelling. My father and I have been waiting with great difficulty. I picked up my chopsticks again and continued eating. After listening to all of it, it actually doesn't have much to do with me. As the orphan of a high-ranking official, my role in this was merely a facade. The Crown Prince and the Emperor had long been prepared for this rebellion, because before long, the turmoil in the capital was completely quelled. The Crown Prince received the news and prepared to return to the capital. Before leaving, he left 2 guards with me. Unfortunately, the eldest son of the Shun family has escaped. Shun Li was executed on the spot, while the second son of the Shun family was captured and imprisoned. As for Lady Shun, I suppose you had already guessed that she passed away from illness some time ago. Although I had long suspected it, hearing the confirmed news, I still felt somewhat sad and dazed. My suspicions had been aroused ever since Shun Wanxing began preventing me from seeing her. Now think about it. Aunt Shun is the most intolerant of evil. Her entire family is loyal and brave, wholeheartedly devoted to the sovereign, and would absolutely not tolerate rebellion from her own husband. And if Uncle Shun intended to take any action, he certainly couldn't keep it hidden from her. So, did she die of illness, or was she murdered? After witnessing the reactions of the Shun family following Shun Wenyu's death, it's hard for me not to suspect the worst outcome. Your Highness, could you help me bring over my aunt's ashes? I whispered my request. The Crown Prince raised an eyebrow and nodded in agreement. Not long after, I received the urn delivered post-haste from the capital. I went up the mountain alone and buried Aunt Shun beneath a pear tree. Beneath that tree were two other small mounds, where my parents, who had passed away many years ago, were laid to rest. Aunt Shun and my mother have been close friends for many years, so I believe she would probably like it here. After finishing all this, I wiped the sweat off my brow and straightened up. At that moment, a hand rested on my shoulder. I was the first to feel it. It was a thick, heavy scent of blood. From behind came a familiar, weary, and hoarse voice, saying, "If there's a chance, bury Wenyu here too. Mother loved him most when she was alive. If he's too far away, I'm afraid she'll miss him even in the underworld." I did not turn around. He refused coldly and firmly. "No. I'm afraid my parents would find it dirty." A sudden, immense force struck. My wrist was seized, and I was pinned to the ground. Crimson drops of blood splattered onto my face. At this moment, Shun Wanxing was truly in a wretched state. His face was covered in blood, and it was unclear how many more injuries he had, whether from pain or anger. His expression was extremely ferocious. "You are, after all, the wife of the Shun family. How dare you show disdain?" I was not the least bit afraid. "Just a casual remark my mother made while chatting with your aunt, that's all. When I was young, His Majesty even joked about making me the crown princess. So, by that logic, your Shun family would have to wait in line." Shun Wanxing was so enraged that he turned his head and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Have you never liked me? Never liked either of them?" His voice was strained, his eyes bloodshot, as if they were about to shed tears of blood. I closed my eyes. I shattered his last hope with a whisper, "Never." A burning teardrop fell on my eyelid. I hadn't even had time to open my eyes. Shun Wanxing, with nothing left to lose, tore at my clothes with a furious laugh. "Fine, very fine indeed. Today, with heaven and earth as our witness and our parents as our proof, I will make you completely my wife." His words came to an abrupt halt in the wilderness. Shun Wanxing looked down and saw the long sword that had pierced through his heart and lungs. I seized the opportunity to kick him to the ground. The guards left by the Crown Prince appeared before us, and the Crown Prince himself hurriedly emerged from the small grove. He quickly stepped forward, taking off his own outer robe to drape over me, his face full of guilt. I slapped his hand away and said sarcastically, "If you ever face hardship in the future, do not hesitate to ask me. I haven't even spoken, yet your Highness has already given me plenty of hardships." From the moment he left those two guards behind, it was all premeditated. Shun Wanxing is too good at hiding his tracks. If we don't actively lure him out, he might completely escape, leaving behind a great disaster. And I happened to be the perfect bait. Fortunately, the Crown Prince informed me of the plan in advance. Otherwise, even if he is the Crown Prince, I would have to turn against him. The Crown Prince looked embarrassed. He wasn't arrogant at all, coaxing me repeatedly, apologizing and making amends. I was just about to coax more gold, silver, and guards from him. The hem of the garment was suddenly tugged gently. I turned around and met Shun Wanxing's dying eyes. He never admitted fault in his entire life. I don't think he would feel guilty even in his final moments, nor leave an apology for me. But I saw his tears. Tears slid from the corner of his eye, over the bridge of his high nose, and fell into the other eye socket. He gazed at me from afar, as if a kaleidoscope of memories flashed before his eyes. His pupils gradually grew unfocused. It seemed as if I had seen a distant past. He tugged at the corner of his mouth, revealing a barely noticeable smile. He called out to me softly, "Little sister." I can no longer remember when exactly I stopped calling him brother. Perhaps it was from the very beginning, the day I first felt a girl's affection for him. But almost everyone in the family had already assumed that I would marry Unworthy, his younger brother. I sensed his distance. My youthful admiration never had the chance to be spoken aloud. It had already been worn away by the elder brother's harshness and deliberate distance. The air in the mountains and fields is, after all, more refreshing than that in the city. I raised my hand and gently closed Unworthy's eyes. "Take his body back to the capital. Don't leave it here." The crown prince nodded and ordered his subordinates to handle it. He followed me as I stood up, with many grass clippings clinging to his luxurious robe and dark hair, but he looked delighted, neither brushing them off nor minding the dirt, as we walked down the mountain side by side. The crown prince casually plucked a blade of foxtail grass. He laughed and reached out to tickle me, casually testing the waters. "Everything is settled. Would you like to come back to the capital with me?" Since when have we become so close? "I'm not going back." The crown prince could not hide his disappointment. But soon, he regained his spirits. "A shortcut could be built between here and the capital. Once the road is open, I can come to see you in just a day's journey." After saying that, he suddenly remembered and cautiously asked, "Then, can I come?" "As you wish." The second story. Father brought home the illegitimate daughter who had been living outside. She was bright and lively, unlike the dull and uninteresting women confined to the inner chambers. Father cherished her like a precious jewel, and her brothers willingly followed her around, amusing and playing with her. Even my crown prince fiancé only complained about her being noisy and rude with his words. Whenever she was present, he couldn't help but let his eyes follow her, even publicly gifting her a red fox as a token of his affection. I lowered my head and stared at the dull, ugly grey fox fur in front of me. Speaking calmly, "Let's call off the engagement." The smile froze on his face, and the crown prince raised his voice in disbelief. "Are you breaking off the engagement with me over a mere fox pelt?" "Yes, in the royal hunting grounds, with all the court nobles gathered." My sudden announcement of the broken engagement instantly drew everyone's attention. Everyone held their breath, cautiously observing us. "Fanghua, you were personally chosen by the Empress Dowager to be the crown princess. With such a narrow-minded disposition, how could you ever be fit to become the mother of a nation?" The crown prince clutched the grey fox fur tightly in his hands, explaining with a helpless expression, "I simply thought the red fur was bold and vibrant, and it suited Liu better, which is why I gave it to her. As for this grey fur, it truly is of inferior quality. If you don't like it, I'll find a better one for you in the future. Why must you keep bringing up calling off the engagement?" "That's right, dear sister. He gave it to me because I often wear red. Don't overthink it. I only see him as an elder brother. A man as rigid and dull as him is simply not my type." Lanyu walked over casually, chiming in with a smile, completely missing the fleeting loneliness in Xiao Yang's eyes. I straightened up and stared at them intently. A man gifting a red fox expresses his admiration for a woman. If my sister doesn't understand, could it be that even the crown prince is ignorant? Xiao Yang's little scheme was exposed in public, instantly flustering him, and a faint blush spread across his face. Just as he was about to defend himself, he saw Lanyu roughly pull off the red fox fur from around her neck and throw it back into his arms. Her face flushed as she frowned and complained, "You, Xiao Yang, I thought of you as a brother, yet you actually harbor such feelings for me." After saying this, she hastily gave a clumsy, crooked bow to everyone, turned around, and ran off. Xiao Yang lifted his foot to chase after her, but was stopped by the Empress. "Crown Prince, Fanghua is the crown princess I have meticulously chosen for you, a model among noble ladies. How could you abandon her in public to chase after another woman? This is truly foolish." That one named Lanyu, though also a daughter of the Shui family, is utterly unrefined. If you seek novelty, you can take her as a concubine after marrying Fanghua. Xiao Yang's face darkened. "A concubine? She is the bright moon in the sky. How could she be wronged as a mere concubine?" He glanced at me once more, then declared with resolve, "If you had behaved properly, I might have still married you for Lan Yu's sake, but you are narrow-minded, exposing my feelings for Lan Yu in public and causing everyone to lose face. I no longer need to put on a show with you. I am breaking off the engagement with you." With that, he ran out of the hunting ground without looking back. Leaving everyone sighing in dismay, I curled the corner of my mouth and bowed respectfully toward his retreating figure. "I respectfully obey the Crown Prince's decree." The Empress took my hand and said, "Fanghua, the Crown Prince was deceived by that woman and acted foolishly in the moment. You must not take it seriously. The position of Crown Princess is yours and yours alone." I could tell the Empress was truly anxious. After all, the current Emperor has many children. With 10 princes already of age, although the Crown Prince is the eldest legitimate son, his position is far from secure. My maternal family is the prestigious Qinghe Kui clan, with deep roots in the court. Only by marrying me could the Crown Prince's status be truly stabilized. We women of the Kui family hold such esteemed status that we are not inferior even to princesses, and we certainly cannot tolerate any disrespect. Xiao Yang publicly humiliated me today for Shui Lan Yu. So I no longer need to spare any feelings. I silently withdrew my hand and gave a slight curtsy. "There's no need for your highness to persuade me. The Crown Prince is deeply in love with my younger sister and has just announced the annulment of the engagement in public. This marriage is naturally off." The grey fox fur was trampled under my feet, and a faint smile curled at the corner of my lips. "Xiao Yang, I'd like to see how many more days you can hold on to your position as Crown Prince without the support of my Kui family." Returning to the residence, I saw from a distance that Shui Lan Yu was surrounded by servants, all chattering about something. "Ever since my mother passed away and my father brought her home," she declared. "Servants are people too. There's no need to follow all these tedious formalities in front of me." The servants in the residence all loved to gather around her, saying she's a fairy sent down from heaven, yet she possesses far more human warmth than other masters and young ladies. The Crown Prince publicly confessed his feelings for Miss Lan Yu today and even broke off his engagement with the eldest young lady. I bet the position of Crown Princess is going to fall right into our young lady's lap. No need to say it. Didn't you see all the lavish gifts the Crown Prince sent over? The eldest young lady never received such treatment before. Our young lady is kind-hearted, not like other masters who only care about rules and show no mercy. See, good people get their rewards. It's so true. They had also heard about what happened at the hunting grounds during the day, and they all rushed to flatter and please Shui Lan Yu. Shui Lan Yu, unusually shy, waved her hand to stop them from discussing. All right, no more teasing. That Xiao Yang is really something. We're clearly just friends, yet he insists on saying such things in public. I haven't even agreed to him, and it's as if he's already proposing, practically offering up the entire Eastern Palace to me. Her elder brothers had also heard about it. Lan Yu, although Fanghua is also a sister in the family, somehow, you have the opportunity to become the Crown Princess, and we brothers are genuinely happy for you. Hey, it's fine if you talk nonsense in front of me, but don't let our elder sister hear it. She's a girl raised in the inner chambers. Sensitive and overthinking. If these words reach her ears, she'll be heartbroken. Shui Lan Yu looked smug but pretended to be concerned about me. Father was amused by her cheerful and straightforward manner, praising her repeatedly for being open-hearted and honest, watching their family's joyful and lively scene. Even though I was long accustomed to it, I couldn't help but feel wronged. Returning to my room, I took out my mother's keepsake, carefully retrieved a seal from its hidden layer, and handed it to the maid. "Go ask that person if the cooperation he mentioned still stands." Sleepless through the night, I stared at the dark circles under my eyes. Sitting before the mirror, letting the maid style my hair, the door was pushed open with a bang. Xiao Yang walked in with a look of unease, and noticing the exhaustion on my face, his tone unexpectedly softened. "Fanghua, about what happened yesterday. I was impulsive. Please don't take it to heart. You will always have a place in my heart. But since I publicly called off the engagement yesterday, a ruler's word cannot be taken back. Naturally, I cannot welcome you into the Eastern Palace with the ceremony of a crown princess. For now, I can only ask you to accept the position of a concubine, but you needn't be upset. Lan Yu is your own sister. broad-minded, and not like those ordinary women with all their complicated thoughts. In the future, she will only hold the title of Crown Princess. But you will still be the one in charge of the Eastern Palace affairs. You are reasonable and will surely not put me in a difficult position. I listened to him patiently, barely holding back a laugh. Fang Hua never knew that in this world, there exists a principle where the legitimate daughter becomes a concubine, and the illegitimate daughter becomes the wife. Father walked straight in and interrupted me. I haven't had the chance to tell you yet, but I have decided to bring Lanue's birth mother's memorial tablet into the ancestral hall. From now on, like you, she will also be a legitimate daughter of the Shui family in every proper sense. I froze, turning to look at him. The man who once knelt by my mother's sickbed, clutching his chest and vowing she would be his only official wife in this lifetime, the father who once cherished me like a treasure, had now unapologetically broken his promise. Seeing my despondent expression, Xiao Yang seemed somewhat reluctant to hurt me further. He took a begonia hairpin from his sleeve and pressed it into my hand. Fang Hua, I know you've been wronged this time, as long as you and your sisters get along harmoniously in the future. I promised to treat you just as before, no different from the past. I recognized it at a glance. It was something Shui Lanyu had picked over and discarded a few days ago. A wave of disgust rose in my heart, and I instinctively pushed the object away. Just then, Shui Lanyue's lively and bright greeting came from a distance. Xiao Yang, you said we'd go watch the acrobatics together today. Aren't we leaving? Father, you should come too. Xiao Yang's eyes lit up instantly, and he turned to leave. With his father following behind him with a loving expression, the hairpin slipped from his hand, falling to the ground with a dull thud. He didn't know that I disliked crabapple blossoms, nor did he know that things touched by others, no matter how precious, would never catch my eye. Before long, the maid approached and whispered a report. Miss, that person said, in 10 days he will welcome you with a grand bridal procession. My gaze sharpened. Xiao Yang, you were the one who abandoned me first. From now on, don't blame me for what happens. My marriage contract with that person reached the emperor's ears. The next morning, the decree summoning me to the palace arrived at the Shui residence. Fang Hua, my child, if the crown prince is incompetent, I can punish him to vent your anger. Why must it come to breaking off the engagement? You know, Xiao Yang only ascended to the position of crown prince because of his engagement to you. Now that you and... Could it be that I must appoint another crown prince for you? The emperor looked deeply troubled, as if he had aged many years overnight. Fang Hua dares not. Your Majesty has also heard of the circumstances that day. The annulment of the engagement was spoken by the crown prince himself. How could he go back on his word? As for the matter of the heir, Fang Hua dares not presume to comment. Fang Hua only knew that no matter which prince it was, he was ultimately the emperor's son. I bowed respectfully with perfect grace, not a single flaw to be found in my demeanor. He sighed deeply, wanting to say more, but outside the door, the voices of the courtiers rose one after another. Listening carefully, every word was an accusation of Xiao Yang's absurdity. I curled the corner of my mouth. At least half of the court officials come from the Kui family lineage, and most of the remaining ones have received favors from the Kui family. As the new head of the Kui family, even the current emperor wouldn't dare to let me suffer any grievances. Yet Xiao Yang actually broke off our engagement for some reckless, low-born girl, utterly foolish. Such a crown prince is not worthy of the loyalty and service of his ministers. The emperor, seeing my resolute expression, knew there was no room for reversal in this matter and helplessly waved his hand. Enough, after all, Yang is not blessed with such fortune. After leaving the palace, I didn't rush back home but instead made a detour to the pastry shop to buy several bags of snacks, thinking of the children's sweet smiles as they called out Sister Fang Hua around me later. I couldn't help but feel a warmth in my heart, but before I could even get close to the private school's gate, I heard the lively noise from inside. The children had gathered around Xiao Yang and Shui Lanyu, looking up with their innocent little faces. Brother Yang, this sister is so much fun. Way more interesting than Sister Fang Hua. We love playing with her. The children's little faces were flushed, their foreheads damp with sweat. The game I just taught you is called Wooden Man, and you've never even played it before. How pitiful. All you do is read those dull, tedious 8-part essays all day. making your little brains go numb. This wretched feudalism, this society that devours people. She snatched the book from the desk with one hand, flung it aside in disgust, and muttered something I couldn't understand. Xiao Yang frowned, and an unusual light immediately sparked in his eyes. Lan Yu, I always thought you were just lively and cheerful, but I never imagined you thought this way. I too detest these pedantic studies. They turn people into rigid, rule-bound plants, devoid of any human warmth. Shui Lan Yu grew even more pleased with herself upon hearing his praise. That's right, I'm no ordinary lady raised in the inner chambers. I know a great deal. And I'll tell you more in time. When you inherit the throne, I'll assist you in creating a golden age, leaving our names for eternity. She spoke on and on, basking in the children's admiring gazes, but failed to notice the flicker of impatience in Xiao Yang's eyes. I sighed inwardly. This private school was founded entirely with my own funds, specifically to take in homeless orphans, providing them shelter and hiring a teacher to educate them. I only brought Xiao Yang here before. It was our little secret, yet he brought Shui Lan Yu along and let her freely belittle my hard work. As for those children, they were easily won over by just a few novel tricks. It's truly disheartening. I didn't speak, silently bending down to place the pastries outside the door. Just as I was about to turn around, a timid voice sounded. Is it Sister Fanghua? Xiao Yang and Shui Lan Yu both looked toward the door. Shui Lan Yu let out a disdainful cold snort. Indeed, a woman raised in the inner chambers is well versed in the art of stalking. I kindly advise you to focus on improving yourself instead of revolving around men all day, losing your own identity. How pitiful and pathetic. So, Shui Lan Yu, by improving yourself, you mean seducing someone else's fiancé? I sneered and turned to leave. Behind me, Shui Lan Yu was fuming with anger, while Xiao Yang quickly tried to soothe her with gentle words. All right, Lan Yu, don't bother with her. A remarkable woman like you is beyond her comparison. Back at the residence, my courtyard was already filled with festive red chests. The maid said they were betrothal gifts from that man. I nodded slightly and ordered the servants to carry them back to the storeroom. I only kept a pair of small, emerald green items, mimic parrots from the western regions. A delightful sight to behold, miss, the man said. He has personally trained these little ones for many years, and they can speak quite a bit. Let them stay by your side to keep you company and amuse you. My heart warmed at this. So, he was such a thoughtful man after all. The little ones were truly adorable, and I couldn't resist reaching out to play with them. But I was stopped by a sharp cry. Don't touch them. Shui Lan Yu stormed in angrily, pointing a finger at me. You ladies of the inner chambers have nothing to do all day, so you amuse yourselves with these living creatures. Do you know that birds yearn for the sky? Locking them up like this is selfish and cruel. With that, she flung open the birdcage and tossed the parrot into the sky, a condescending savior-like demeanor. But the next second, the bird crashed violently into the stone pillar, blood splattering on the spot. Shui Lan Yu's smile froze, her face turning deathly pale. How could this be? I clearly set them free. Why would they choose to die? Why, Shui Lan Yu, you are not them. So how could you know what they truly want? You call me selfish and cruel, yet they died because of you. You look down on women confined to the inner chambers, always advocating for what you call justice. But in my opinion, your hypocrisy is the real cruelty. She speaks of freedom in every sentence, yet she doesn't realize that sometimes constraints and rules can also be a form of protection. The warmth that had just risen in my heart because of them instantly turned into hatred for Shui Lan Yu. I mercilessly tore apart her words, one by one. It was rare for me to be so hysterical. Xiao Yang, who had rushed over, was also startled. He immediately dashed to my side, firmly shielding the stunned Shui Lan Yu behind him. Shui Fanghua, Lan Yu is the future crown princess. How dare you slander her like this? Furious, I was about to argue when Shui Lan Yu buried her head in Xiao Yang's embrace. I'm sorry, I just wanted to set them free. Why did they choose to die? I didn't mean to. Shui Lan Yu's distraught appearance made Xiao Yang's heart ache, and he immediately scooped her up into his arms. Before leaving, he coldly ordered the nuns behind him. Shui Fanghua has shown disrespect to the crown princess. You are to watch her kneel in the ancestral hall and copy the rules for women 10,000 times. She is not to rise until she finishes. I let out a soft hum and stepped toward my room. The nuns looked troubled as they stopped me. Miss, the Crown Prince's order. You should still. I straightened my posture. The Crown Prince dares to punish me by kneeling. He should first ask the Kui family if they agree. After saying that, I dusted off my sleeves and went straight back to my room. Xiao Yang really doesn't know his place. Even his father, the emperor, wouldn't dare to punish me, yet he, an unstable crown prince, dares to spout nonsense in front of me. It seems the crown prince position is truly going to change hands. In the following days, I peacefully awaited my marriage. After witnessing the parrot's death, Shui Lanyu was deeply affected, and Xiao Yang took her to the cold mountain temple outside the city to pray for blessings. They enjoyed the scenery and had a delightful time along the way. All along the way, their affection grew deeper. Xiao Yang swore to the heavens, the earth, and the mountains that he would ask the emperor to grant them marriage as soon as they returned to the palace. But the moment they stepped into the capital and saw the red silk and lanterns adorning the city walls, an inexplicable...
The emperor nodded silently in approval. Xiao Yang waved his hand, and the women formed a line. Stepping forward one by one, they tightened their waists, dressed as men. And as the drumbeats fell, they drew soft swords from their waists in unison and began to dance. No one had ever seen so many women wielding swords together. Their eyes filled with astonishment. Even the emperor was momentarily stunned. Xiao Yang, however, interpreted this as awe and admiration. Father, the envoys have now witnessed that even the women of Great Xia can take up swords to fight the enemy. They will surely not dare to underestimate our dynasty's strength and will have no choice but to submit. His expression animated. He could hardly contain his excitement at the thought of how the emperor would reward him after the banquet. Lanyu, your method is indeed effective. With unparalleled wisdom and strategy, truly worthy of being called a female Zhuge Liang. Shui Lanyu lifted her chin with an air of pride. But the next moment, amidst the exhilarating drumbeats, an unusual sound gradually emerged. The originally valiant female soldiers softened their postures, collapsing into the laps of the envoys, and some, even more brazen, had already shed most of their garments, about to engage in intimate acts right then and there. How dare you, scoundrels? Is this your carefully planned arrangement? You've turned the tribute from all nations into a lewd affair. Guards, take these shameless creatures away. Utterly disgraceful. Xiao Yang turned his head abruptly and nearly fainted at the sight before him. Lanyu, what on earth is going on here? A sharp-eyed attendant stepped forward to report. Your Highness, these women all seem to be from the Tianxiang Pavilion in the capital. The one with the rose tattoo on her waist is the courtesan. Xiao Yang couldn't believe his ears. When Shui Lanyu proposed the sword dance performed by female troops, he was also taken by surprise. But after hearing her idea, he felt she was a genius bestowed by heaven. Yet he never expected that, in order to showcase the nation's prestige, she would actually choose women from the pleasure quarters. Shui Lanyu knew she had caused trouble and was already flustered. Suddenly being yelled at by Xiao Yang, she felt deeply wronged. What's wrong with women from the pleasure quarters? All people are born equal. Women from the pleasure quarters are no lesser than anyone else. You only gave me a few days. How am I supposed to form a women's army for you? Those delicate ladies from noble families are so frail they can't even lift a sword. They're not even as capable as those women. Silence. Xiao Yang listened to Shui Lanyue's excuse. He used to find her quick-witted and full of surprising ideas that delighted him, but today's words were simply beyond belief. The noble ladies present also frowned in unison, cursing Shui Lanyu vehemently in their hearts. What a shameless creature. How dare she compare those brothel women to us? Before, I only thought she didn't understand the rules. But I never expected she wouldn't even grasp the most basic morals and sense of shame. Still, it's understandable. After all, the Crown Prince was once her brother-in-law, a proper man. How could she even think of stealing her own sister's marriage? Shui Lanyu, ever since transmigrating into this world, had relied on her modern wits to win the attention and affection of everyone around her. When had she ever heard such harsh words? She couldn't help but defend herself. That's not true. I never tried to seduce anyone. I never expected them to behave like that in public. At this moment, Xiao Yang found her particularly noisy and grew increasingly impatient. Cutting her off directly, escort the Crown Princess back to the palace. After saying this, he closely followed behind the emperor, carrying thorns on his back to plead for forgiveness. As he passed by me, he didn't forget to cast a deep glance my way. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. The banquet ultimately ended in absurdity. As I left, I noticed Xiao Lai's calm expression and reached a conclusion in my heart. After spending this time together, I have a vague sense that he is not as gentle and harmless as he appears on the surface. Instead, he is like a wolf lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike his enemy down. Clearly, today is that rare and perfect opportunity. Husband, what skillful tactics. I leaned in close and whispered softly. There was no shortage of affirmation and appreciation in the tone. Xiao Lai looked at me in surprise, then curled the corners of his lips into a light smile. I knew I couldn't hide it from you. Originally, Shui Lanua's method was indeed novel and had a fair chance of success. Yet she resorted to a clever trick, not choosing the right person, eager for quick results, and selected a courtesan to perform before the emperor. She felt that courtesans were not inferior to others, and even believed that her unconventional approach deserved the emperor's praise. But she never expected that Xiao Lai had long ago ordered someone to hide a sufficient amount of aphrodisiac in their garments. This led to the absurd scene that had just unfolded. This time, Xiao Yang personally destroyed the image that Daxia had painstakingly built in front of the foreign envoys. The emperor was so enraged that he drew the Shangfang sword and cut off Xiao Yang's crown as the crown prince. How dare you cause such a disaster? You are unworthy of being my crown prince. Before dawn, the imperial edict deposing the crown prince had spread throughout the land. Shui Lanyu returned to the Eastern Palace, but Xiao Yang did not come back for a long time. Leaving her feeling deeply uneasy, she sat alone all night, and it felt as though she had aged 10 years. When she saw Xiao Yang return with disheveled hair, she hurried to greet him. Xiao Yang, this time it was my negligence. I let you down, but don't worry, I still have another way. Enough. Xiao Yang roared with a voice that shook the heavens, lifting his head, his eyes terrifyingly red. It was all because of her. Ever since she appeared, nothing good had happened. Shui Lanyu, it's all your fault. If it weren't for you, I would have already married Fanghua and would not have caused such a great disaster. He clutched Shui Lanua's neck tightly with both hands. Shui Lanua's face flushed crimson, then gradually turned purple as she struggled to breathe. Are you happy now? Father has deposed me. I can no longer be the crown prince, no longer the emperor. She couldn't believe that the man who had once obeyed her every wish and never spoken a harsh word to her now wanted to take her life. No, Xiao Yang, I am your lawfully wedded wife. You cannot kill me. Perhaps I am already carrying your child. You cannot kill me. Only now did she realize that under imperial power, her life was more worthless than an ant. If his hand tightened just a fraction more, she would be dead. Xiao Yang ultimately could not bring himself to be ruthless, and only ordered her to be confined to the corner courtyard. Xiao Yang was deposed as the crown prince. Memorials from court officials requesting the appointment of a new crown prince poured in like snowflakes. Under my direction, the Kui family effortlessly placed Xiao Lai in that position. On the day of the coronation ceremony, I stood side by side with Xiao Lai, basking in the supreme glory. Fanghua, the one who should have been standing by your side was me. How could I have let you slip away to someone else? In the end, I was not blessed with that fortune. After returning, Xiao Yang, as if having lost his mind, rushed to find Shui Lanyu, only to discover that she had long since vanished without a trace. During this period, whenever he was the slightest bit displeased, he would take it out on Shui Lanyu. Under such torment, she ultimately chose to flee, taking with her all the gifts Xiao Yang had previously bestowed upon her. Xiao Yang's eyes were bloodshot. How could he have given up his prime years for such a materialistic woman? He collapsed to the ground in despair, gazing in the direction of the former Eastern Palace, his heart filled with endless regret. Later, I saw Xiao Yang again at the little princess's full moon banquet. He looked at me from afar, disheveled and wretched, his face showing a mix of envy and longing. He recklessly ran toward me but was ultimately stopped firmly by the palace attendants. Fanghua, let me take a closer look at you, he pleaded desperately, eventually disappearing into the night. At that moment, I finally felt relieved, smiling as I opened my mouth to eat the crab meat that Xiao Lai had personally picked out for me. From beginning to end, Xiao Yang's biggest mistake was overestimating my feelings for him. He was certain that I loved him and was willing to yield for his sake. Little did he know that for women of noble families like us, love has always been merely an embellishment. Power is the true lifeblood. END.